This season of Impossible Dreams is brought to you by our charity champion, the ALS Network. The ALS Network provides critical care to patients, families, the community, funding to help end ALS with research. We could not be more grateful to the ALS Network for their support, not just of season 1, but now of season 2. Their big gala is this January. It's their Champions Gala. They are honoring the one, the only Eric Dane, whose advocacy work is already affecting the lives of millions. Please visit the alsnetwork.org to learn more about their mission, how you can get involved and make a donation. Thank you so much. And let's get into today's episode. Adam Glass.
Aaron Lazar.
Adam Ian Glass?
Oh my God.
Is that the middle name?
I thought I scrubbed that from the internet.
Did you? No, I didn't even Google that. I feel like it must be in my brain from some Google search.
Yeah, no.
It's not like when we hang, we talk about our middle names all the time.
Well, it's funny because I don't know why, but Adam Glass just sounds perfect.
Oh, dude, fantastic Hollywood name.
Hollywood name.
Fantastic.
Totally made up. My real name's Adam Lipshit. No.
I was going to say. No. Nice. But you are a nice Jewish boy.
Yes, I am a nice Jewish boy, for sure.
With Glass as the real last name.
Glass is well, actually, that's a crazy story.
Go for it.
So here it is. I was born Adam Doran.
Also a great Hollywood name.
D-U-R-E-N. And
not so good.
When
I was D-O-R-E-N.
Exactly. Not as good.
Not as good.
So I did a rewrite. No. So basically when I grew up in the Bronx with my mom and my bubby.
Okay.
And my Aunt Celeste and my Aunt Stephanie, who just passed away. Love you, Aunt Stephanie. So I used to joke I grew up with Hannah and her sisters. It was like just there were no men. It was just all these women. And I was about to be bar mitzvah when I was 13. And everyone kept saying, "You're not Jewish." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "You blonde hair, blue eyes." And back then, and by the way, my whole family is dark hair, dark eyes. So every family photo was like,
who's that kid?
Yeah, who's
the mailman?
Yeah, who they steal kids. So I kept saying to my bubby, "Why do they keep saying this?" And she's like, "Well, your biological father wasn't Jewish." And they were like, "What do you want for your birthday?" I'm like, "The truth would be nice."
Oh my
start
God.
with that, right?
So mom Jewish, dad not.
Mom was Jewish, and then when I was 3, I was adopted by Howard Glass, who was another neighborhood kid who my mother grew up with. And my mom was sneaking out. It was 1967, sneaking out to the village to see all the great bands and partying. And she was 17 years old. And she met a musician, a guitar player from Georgia.
Wow.
And they were together for 6 weeks. And she got pregnant with me. And she went to her mother. And my bubby was like, "He's not Jewish. And you're not even 18. Goodbye." So all of a sudden, my mother was sent to the Deep South, And if you look up a picture of
Bubby kicked mom
out for being pregnant by a non-Jew and also not being 18 years of age.
Oh, wow.
So she's like, "Goodbye." So my mom goes down south, and if you looked up a picture of in the dictionary of a Jew, there's a photo of my mother. Big, just the stereotype.
Wow.
Like dark hair, dark eyes, big nose. And this is right after she gets down there. Bobby Kennedy gets killed. Martin Luther King gets killed. She's a fish out of water. She's a Jewish girl from the Bronx. So it was very hard for her. I'm born.
This is in Georgia.
In Decatur, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. So I was born, and the story goes, my mother turned around, and back then they just knocked you out. She wasn't even up for it.
Oh.
She doesn't remember anything.
Yep.
And then she wakes up in the middle of the night, and she has a, IV, and she's wheeling it because she's wheeling to go see me. And she's like, "Nobody's in the hospital." She's like, "I'm walking through these hallways, and I'm trying to find where the babies are." And she goes, "I find the babies." It's August 1968, and the babies are segregated. White babies on one side, black babies on the other side. And she goes in and she's looking at all the things because she knows the family name. She doesn't even know what they named me. She turns around, and so she goes to the woman and says, a nurse comes out. She said, a black nurse came out and said, "Mama, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Because she thinks I'm dead. She's crying. She's like, she doesn't see me. And they just didn't tell her. And she says, "I'm looking for my baby." So what's the baby's name? She said, "Doran." And she goes, "The Jew baby." They couldn't put me with the white babies or the black babies. So the nurses built me a little thing in the back of the nurse station. And so that's where they put me. My mom shockingly, it didn't work out with the two hippies who knew each other for 6 weeks and were 18 and 17 at the time. So my mom left when I was about 6 months old and took me back to the Bronx, which is where I was raised.
Got it.
So when I was 13, I found out the truth. My mother remembered that my grandfather cut hair in Covington, Georgia, and that his name was Bill Doran. We sent a letter. they said, called. We always wondered what happened to you. My mom said they were always good people. Like, he wasn't great, but his people were great. So I went and I met they sent a ticket. I went down and I met my family for the first time. Wow. And I looked like everybody. I walked into a room full of people that I looked exactly like. But again, like my mother, raised very Jewish in the Bronx, very different sort of, upbringing. In fact, they had a cross on their wall. I said, "Oh, you're Catholic?" And they said, "No, we're Baptist." I said, "What's Baptist?" Because I only knew anybody who I knew who had a cross was Catholic. There was only Catholic and Jews in New York City back when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So I didn't know there was anything else. But the craziest,
Italian Catholic.
Yeah, Italian or Irish Catholic, Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
So I had no idea there was any other denominations of anything. So then, to make matters even crazier, my father's not there. And I'm like, and they're like, "Well, he lives 2 hours north of here. So do you want to meet him?" I said, "Yeah. I mean, it's half the reason I came down here."
Yeah, you've told me this, and this is unbelievable.
Yeah, they got me in a car and they drove me to the Georgia State Penitentiary. And of course, I'm 13, 14 at the time, and I'm like, "Oh, he's a guard." Not a guard. I met him through a plexiglass window. He was, he's doing time for basically drug trafficking and gun running and all that stuff. And he was a big guy, and he was all tatted up and looked like a hard guy. And I look now in the mirror, I look just like him, but at the time he was scary. And he really didn't want anything to do with me. So we never were that close, even though I have 2 half-brothers from him who I'm close with.
Wow.
But his family were amazing people. My grandma and grandpa were amazing people. My aunts and uncles, who I'm still close with, and my cousins were great people. And I started spending all my summers and all my holidays down there. So I like to joke and say I'm a bit of a Jubilee.
A Jubilee.
A Jubilee.
Nice.
So gives me a little bit of my flavor, I think, and who I am. And, you talk about stories. When I look back now, I never, why'd I get that job? Especially in a creative, why'd I get that writing gig, or why'd I get this and why'd I get that? And I now can look back and say, well, I had an interesting story, right?
Well,
it was different.
I mean, thanks for sharing. That's an unbelievable story. Robbie, you're from down the south.
Pretty down there.
Where
Yeah,
you
North
from,
Carolina.
There he is. He's from the Carolinas.
North Carolina.
Carolina.
Right there on the Mason-Dixie line.
It's where are you from in Carolina?
Charlotte.
Big
city.
Charlotte.
Urban.
By the way, I know you had Mark Cuban on. Top that story, Mark
Top
Cuban.
that story,
Let's
Cuban.
go. Boom. Drop the mic.
No. Cubes. Mark, I shouldn't call him Cubes. Maybe can I call him Cube? Mark gave us some good stuff, but that's good stuff, man. Wow.
Well, it's also your life, right?
It's
so
your
when
life.
people look back, you go, they say, "How'd you do it?" You're like, "I just lived it. I just,
Well, but so then that's the perfect segue into did you write then your life? Have you been writing your life? I mean, for those of you listening or watching who aren't, as well versed Adam Glass fans as some of us, Supernatural all the way to on CW, all the way to is it In From the Cold?
In From the Cold on Netflix.
On Netflix, which was more recent, but then The Equalizer is most recent, and then in between, all kinds of stuff.
Cold Case, Criminal Minds, Beyond Borders.
Some of the greatest, what are they called? They're called episodics.
Yeah, franchises.
Right, franchise. And for my sister Dana at home, Sean Hayes has, I keep saying this, so this is the last episode where I will explain that for my sister Dana at home, who has no idea what an episodic is, Sean Hayes has his Tracy, so I've got Dana.
Yeah.
So for my sister Dana at home, an episodic, what is that versus
1 hour? Well, it could be different things, but for me, it was a 1 hour dramatic television series. It could also be a 30-minute sitcom series, right? So it's different. It's what I would call traditional television, which, we might be the last generation to have grown up and seen. CBS, ABC,
right.
CW, network television,
from a storytelling
Fox.
Perspective, does it mean what somebody once told me it meant, which I think I'm going to try and remember? An episodic versus a serialized show means that the
beginning, middle, and end,
and that you could pick up in an episodic series anywhere, and not have to know everything that happened.
Yes, though that's changing, but to 100%. When I was coming up, you had contained episodes, and you could drop in as a viewer at any time and pick up a series. I always joke, I'm always a few years too late to most shows. So, I got into Magnum PI when I was in my 20s watching it in reruns.
Right.
Not when it was hot, when I was in high school, right? It was that's when 10 years later, I got into the show. And same thing, just watched a rerun and I was like, oh my God, this Tom Selleck guy, I think he's a star. And I was right.
Hi, everyone. I just want to take a moment to speak about a cause that is so near and dear to my heart, the ALS Network. The ALS Network is not only our charity champion, helping us to bring season 1 and now season 2 of impossible dreams to you, our audience. But the ALS Network is a critical care organization. They provide care, most of it free, to patients like me, our families, the community. They help fund research to end ALS. And this January, coming up, is their Champions Gala. It happens once a year. It's incredibly important. It's a huge fundraising event for them. And they honored me 2 years ago. This year, they are honoring Eric Dane. You know Eric Dane from Grey's Anatomy. And recently, I worked with Eric Dane in a show on Amazon called The Countdown. Eric Dane's courage to speak about his diagnosis and living with ALS has already affected the lives of millions. And Eric, with his courage and resilience, is really helping to change the conversation, which is what we're all trying to do here. ALS is not just a patient's problem. It's an everybody issue. We all need to work together to help flip the script. So you can help by visiting alsnetwork.org and learning about the mission, donating, supporting, learning how you can get involved. We appreciate your love and support so much. Thank you. And now back to the episode.
There's so much to talk about here, but before we go there, would you say then you've been in some way writing your story? You're a born storyteller, because that's one of the greatest first moments of life on earth stories, right? All the way to learning the truth when you're making that sort of manful passage, right? The passage, the what am I saying? The rite of passage into manhood, right?
Yeah. For your bar mitzvah. It's interesting. I think you don't sometimes realize your story till later in life. You're too busy living it. Like, isn't that what John Lennon says? You're too busy living life to know you're making history, or something like that, right? So
I think if you're doing it right, as I've learned, you should
right.
be.
So, but I would say something different for me. I think I was always looking for a male figure in my life when I was younger. So there were a lot of mentors, and if I look at the people who are mentors, most of them were good storytellers. And I think I picked up pieces from everybody. And then I think culturally, I think Jews and, general, the Jewish people were great storytellers. So I think, all those things combined, sort of definitely helped me get into that. And then the thing that really saved me as a kid, and again, I'm a product of, my time. So let's take the 70s, early 70s. I always joke and tell the story. This is where I sound like, probably someone's grandfather. For $1, because like when I went to PS 105 in Pelham Parkway, we would be able to leave for lunch at 6 years old, 7, and walk to the Avenue, which was a block or two away. And you can go get anything. And I would get a slice of pizza for 50 cents. I have a quarter for soda. And then I have a quarter left over to play pinball, get an ISIS, or buy a comic book. And I would always buy a comic book. And so I got pulled into comics at a very early age.
Which I should circle back to your bio for a second, because in addition to all of your television writing and show running and film stuff, just an amazing comic book writer who's done some really cool stuff for a bunch of very well-known comics and comic book companies. And I don't know shit about comics, so I won't.
Well, I wrote for DC and Marvel. I've written over 150 graphic novels. I'm a 3-time New York Times bestseller. It always sounds so weird when you're talking about your credentials that way.
It's pretty
It sounds
cool,
like bragging. Bragging.
Very
Three.
cool.
But probably my claim for fame is I put Harley Quinn into the Suicide Squad for the first time. She had never been part of that. And what I got from DC Comics for that is a special thanks and 2 tickets to the premiere, and that's it. So
You got to be kidding.
No. I created $1 billion franchise for them that they didn't even want to do. And, and I got to meet, my wife and I got to meet Margot Robbie at the premiere.
Oh, okay.
So that's it. Like,
So we have that in
who
common,
needs
right?
that money?
Yeah, you don't need the
that?
money. You
Who
met
needs
Margot
that money?
Robbie.
Yeah, exactly.
But wait, is that just because of how comic book, like how it works? Like
You're playing with their toys. They own all the IP. In fact, I've created characters for them that I also don't own. And, and that's what got me started with making independent comics, and eventually, as you know, having my own comic book company called Ninth Circle with a very good friend of ours, Michael Bogner, and also with, a couple of other pretty big writers who we also came together and decided to do this horror franchise together that we have an output by Image Comics. It's called Ninth Circle. And that all really stemmed from a couple of places. One, wanting to tell stories that I wanted to tell that I thought were really cool, and not getting caught up in sort of the politics of sort of like any big company, maybe a DC or maybe a Marvel. It was also a way to turn around and really like almost like going back to United Artists, like giving the artist and the writers really the power within the company to create and do things and really own it. So all those things, sort of stem from that. And yeah, I've been really sort of fortunate to have the career I had and the trajectory that I had. But also, like anything, you start to see what works, what doesn't work. And as you evolve and you change, you decide these are the things I can do to sort of make it more palatable for myself and also help other people, which is something we always talk about.
Just staying on Harley Quinn for a second. When you were about to take that on,
Yeah.
did you have any idea what you were about to do, like before you started doing it?
Oh, I wish I knew. I like to say I did. I didn't. I loved comics. Also came to me later in life. People are always like, "Oh, you didn't start writing comics till you were almost 40, I think, at the time." I was in my late 30s, and it really came because I was writing on Supernatural, and that was such a cult favorite show for so many comic book people. And it wasn't that I didn't want the opportunity or chance before. I did, but I just wasn't getting those opportunity chances. Like I always say this, like there's a reason people say it's who you know, right? Like, I definitely knew nobody, and my journey, I think, was a little longer because I had to keep proving myself and meet those people and get out into the world and, do all that stuff. And so what happened was actually two things happened. Not the last strike, but the strike before that, which was, my God, 97, 98?
We're talking writer's strike.
96? Yeah, something like that. I was walking the lines, and I met a young man who, you're walking every day in the rain, you're doing everything like that. Me and this guy started talking. He was a writer at the time. He was on Entourage. His name was Mike Benson. And he was like, wow, you really know your comics, And we're both New York kids, both Jewish kids, grew up at the same time, same age. We had a mutual friend, Aaron Lazar. And he started telling me about a series he was writing. And I knew he had written some books. And he was just struggling with sort of the storytelling on it. It was a tough one. And it was a Deadpool book, actually, called Deadpool Suicide Kings. And so he was like, do you want to write the book with me? And I was like, what? Yeah, of course. It's always been a dream to write a comic book, right? And he went to Axel Alonso, who was his editor, and Axel thankfully said yes. And the next thing I knew, I was writing a book. And that started sort of a run at Marvel. And we did Luke Cage Noir, Deadpool Pulp. We did a couple of Deadpool books, et cetera, et cetera. And then I eventually I wasn't ever really, I don't want to say I'm not good at being in a team, but it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to sort of do my own thing. So I sort of went to DC and sort of, went to them and said, hey, I want to write for you. And they tested me out on a bunch of little books. In fact, I remember walking with my son into the comic book store, and he must have been 7, 8, 9, and it was right before Christmas, and I get a call, and they said, oh, we have Dan Didio and Jim Lee on the phone, which, Jim Lee is one of the greatest artists that ever have lived. I grew up reading his X-Men Claremont comic books as a kid. Cool. Dan Didio was the president of DC Comics, and I was like, hello? And they were like, hey, Adam, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, holy cow, I can't believe these guys are calling me. And they were Supernatural fans. They had known my work, and they said, do you want to come do a Justice League of America annual for us? I said, yeah, of course. I just did it. So I did that, and then I did another book series for them, which is a funny, crazy whole story that would take another hour to tell. There was just a whole bunch of different things that had happened that led to, at the time, they didn't tell us, they were going to do this big thing called the New 52, where they were going to do 52 new titles and reboot them from one. I had no idea. I was just literally turning around and hey, gig. And they sent me a bunch of titles and said, do any of these interest you? And I said, no, not really. I was like, but I grew up really loving Suicide Squad. What are you guys doing with that book? They're like, oh, we talked about it, but what would you do with it, et cetera. So we started talking about what I would do with it. And I pitched them Harley, and they said, you can't have Harley. And I was like, why not? And they said, well, Harley is, we're doing other things with her. And by the way, Harley was a cartoon favorite who had a little bit of success in comics, but not that much. She wasn't the Harley we know now. But I knew her potential. And honestly, this is where it comes from. You want to talk about something personal. My mother, who Jordan loved, who's no longer with us, she lost her father at a very early age. And I always felt like she had me so young, so it was more like a brother-sister relationship. But she was in a lot of abusive relationships, and I always wanted her to love herself more than she did. And I always wanted her to see her value more than she did. I think it's why, my wife, she's a powerhouse. I think it's why I've always been attracted to strong women. I wanted the opposite of what my mother was. Harley was sort of in the same situation. I saw Harley and I was like, she's with the Joker. And this is going to sound crazy, but in my head, I was like, she's like my mom. She's in this abusive relationship. She could be so much more. So what I kept saying to them is I kept using Lauryn Hill for some example, the Emancipation of Lauryn Hill. That album to me was such a big album. So I wanted to do, and I actually titled one of the books, The Emancipation of Harley Quinn.
Cool.
Like, to me, this was her solo album.
Cool.
I wanted her on her own. She had done little things where she'd been on her own before, but nothing that really defined her. So that was really my goal. And I did it, and they said no. They kept saying no. And then they said, use someone else. So I said, I could use anyone. They said, anyone. So I picked someone that I knew that they wouldn't let me use. So that we'd have to go back to Harley. So they were like, who do you want? I'm like, Mary Marvel. And they're like, you can't touch. I said, you said I could have anybody. Like, I was like, why can't I use Mary Marvel? And so finally we got back to the Suicide Squad and back to Harley. And literally I'm sitting with Dan Didio in his office and Mike Martz, who was the head of the Batman universe. And I remember and a guy, another buddy of mine, Pat, who was my editor. And I said, you guys keep telling me to make things reality. Like, make this real. So let me get this straight, because this was the origin story of Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's a psychiatrist at, in the same facility as the Joker, right? And he turns her, basically. And then they lock her up in the same place. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. They would ship her off to somewhere else. And the other famous prison in DC Comics was Belle Rive, which was where the Suicide Squad was. So to me, once I said that, they sort of all got on board. Then here's the truth. The books come out. Jim Lee draws an amazing new picture of Harley, which is the Harley we now know. The fans hated it. They liked her in her Harley Quinn outfit. They thought she was being... So I got in tons of trouble. I mean, I used to joke that I was going to end up dead with a balloon up my butt because like some Harley Quinn fan was going to kill me. I mean, they would scream at me. They had seen me signing and they'd be like, F you, Adam Glass.
Wow.
Yeah, the fan base was really, really hard. And then, again, had nothing to do with me. Like, I wasn't the artist. I had no control over that stuff. They also did Amanda Waller thin. Amanda Waller was a big woman. Right? They used to call her the Wall. So I got shit for that too. So I was getting all this stuff that I had nothing to do with. I was like, oh my God, can we just turn around and deal with the creative?
Yeah.
And so what happened was, as most books start, they really start to decline and go down in sales. They'll have a hot moment. Suicide Squad was going the other way. And it was because of Harley. I'd love to say I knew it was Harley, but I didn't know. Like, that was just, like, I just wanted to use the character for my own purposes and reasons.
Yeah, and you were connected to the story.
And I was connected to the story, and then it worked. And I'll never forget Pat McCallum, who was my editor, who also is no longer with us, but love you, Pat. We turned around, and I'll never forget, the book got really hot, and it was like 7, 8 issues in. He said, we're screwed. I said, why? He goes, no one's been paying attention to us. Now everyone's going to pay attention to us. And he was right. Like, I lasted, I think, another 10, 11 books. And then they replaced me because the book just became so much bigger than me.
Wow.
And arguably led to a $1 billion franchise.
Yeah, right.
Which, listen, James Gunn has been very sweet. He's said my book was an inspiration. That was very nice of him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, totally nice of him.
And the least they could do, I mean, I think I relate it to how, how other things are created. Broadway shows are created and some of the most influential people in the creation of those shows. There used to be contracts for the actors. A workshop contract used to be actors sharing in something. I mean, it was very little, but like the entire cast would share in 1% or something like that. But there was some gesture of recognition that when you go into a room with people to make something that is definitely going to change from what it is to what audiences end up seeing on a Broadway stage, that everybody in that room had something to do with that.
Agreed.
And that went away real quick. I don't remember when, and it was kind of a big deal when producer Jeffrey Seller rewarded the Hamilton cast.
Yeah.
When they became this huge hit with some kind of, I think it's more than 1%. Better than nothing. And as an actor, I'm telling you, it may be 1%. And if you're 1 in 30, a cast of 30 or 40, it's a 30th of 1%, right? But you still go, that's just the right thing to do.
So their version of that, I did put up a storm when the first one came out, and they gave me $10,000.
10 grand.
Yes. $1 billion thing. I got 10 grand.
Right,
So that's their 1%.
Yeah.
Thing. And then they do this thing where they say, well, and again, it's a giant corporation, so also people hide behind the corporation. Not us, man. If it was up to us, brother.
Yeah, not our decision. Yeah, I don't know. I just believe in doing the right thing.
Oh, I agree, man. I agree. I always say there's enough pie to go around for everybody.
Yeah, I believe that too.
Yes.
And I have to, this is a perfect time to talk about you and give you some love because you did more than the right thing when I was on set. You cast me in a fun little guest star on The Equalizer last year.
Yeah.
And, guest starring for actors early in my career was just terrifying, right? Because you want to work on television. I was a theater actor. I want to work on TV. And the best way to work on TV, obviously, the best way to do anything is to practice it. But, unless you're a series regular on a television show, even if you're recurring, which I kind of learned, I really just cracked my head on every rung of the ladder on the way up this thing, which sounds like maybe to an extent as a writer you did. We can circle back. But, you show up on set, right? Yeah. You're the guy that is showing up for the scene or two scenes, maybe three. Nobody has any clue who you are. The whole cast has been together for who knows how long. And your job is to just kick some butt, knock it out of the park, make sure you're not slowing down production and that everybody likes you and that you make these series regulars look good and you do your thing. And sometimes you show up to these shows and you have no idea what you're going to get and what chaos you're walking into. And you got to know how to kind of what are those things that people walk, not a tightrope, but the ones that bounce and move around. I forget what those things are called. You know what I mean? You see people at the beach between two trees kind of balancing on those nylon strap things. It's like it feels like that sometimes. And then you're like the cameras are on, so my legs might be doing that underneath, but when the camera I'm acting my face over it.
Yes.
But I got to say, man, I came onto the set of The Equalizer, had one or two scenes with Queen.
You had 2 scenes with Queen.
2 scenes with Queen, and was so excited to meet her and work with her. But dude, that was your baby, man. You were such a quiet force of leadership and love. And we were in some office building for these scenes, and the entire crew was in the palm of your hand, right? Which, for my sister Dana out there, although she may know this.
A crew is.
Well, no, but a television show there's 100 people, right?
Oh, more.
There's 100. There's all kinds of unions, all kinds of stuff going on. And the showrunner is the guy in charge.
Yeah.
And you were show running The Equalizer.
Yes.
And so my point is, right, that I come on for 2 scenes, and frankly, you could have had a lot better shit to do. And I'm sure you did, and have a lot more important things to do. And I think we were only just getting to know each other at the time, too. So it's not like we were super dear friends, which I'm, glad that we've started to become. But you did everything from introduce me to people to if I needed to go 10-1 for my sister Dana, that's go
to the bathroom.
Take a leak. 10-2 is the other way. So if I need to go 10-1, you're like, I got you, brother.
And no one says 10-2, by the way.
No one says 10-2. What do they say? I've been saying 10-2 to Jordan for 6 weeks.
Exactly.
They just go.
They just lie and say 10-1. No one's going to say 10-2, everyone. It's going to be a minute. Take some time.
Of course. I'm I've never said 10-2. But you were like, hey, man, put a hand on my shoulder. I got you. And you walk me to where I need to get to. And then, at the time I was walking with some leg braces or a walker, I don't even remember. And then just that kind of force of kind of support, right? To then, hey man, try this on this scene, let's try that and then we'll do this. The work. And then the thing's over and it's let's give this guy some love. And it was just such a complete experience of what normally is a difficult thing for an actor to do that I'm proud to say I'm good at.
Very good.
You just made, thank you. You just made an unforgettably fun, joyful experience. And is that something you pride yourself on, on your shows? Are you that guy? Because it seems like you're that guy.
I try. And I think it starts with, I started in the theater. I started as an actor.
Did you?
Yeah.
You've told me a little bit about this.
Yeah. I still remember I did the opening monologue to Henry V. Oh, for muse of fire that was send the greatest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage,
How
and
old
prince
were you?
to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. 18. And then should the warlike Harry assume the port of Mars, and at his heels leashed in like hounds, should famine, sold and fire, crowds for employment. I still remember that whole monologue.
Wow.
But I turned around and I think for me, I had a couple of different things happen where it just didn't work out for me in the theater. And part of it was my own youth and sort of not having the discipline and also not being in a program, I think that for me at least was encouraging me.
Talking about high school or college?
College. High school was great. And then I got to college and I went to SUNY Albany, and it wasn't like the greatest theater program, though. I met Stephen Adley Kagaris, who is obviously an amazing playwright and a buddy of mine. And I met some, really good people there. But the program itself wasn't great. But I knew I wanted to be creative and I wanted to be in that space. But my point is, I've always had a special place in my heart for actors because I feel like you guys really are the ones who are naked there in front of the camera. Like, yes, it's my name. And yes, it could hurt my reputation, but you guys are the ones that are out there, really putting yourself out there. And I grew up sort of in the business with a lot of I always say this, you learn probably more from a bad boss than a good boss, right? Like, you learn so much about what you don't want to do. And I can't tell you how many bosses where I had who were like, just tell the actor to say the lines and shut up, or I'd see it. And I'm like, why? I just never understood that in general. To me, it's a team sport, right? So you want everybody on your team. Like you talked about our crew. The crew for Equalizer is one of the best crews I ever worked with in my life.
Wow.
And
Yeah, it felt like that.
I came into that show if the show had already been up and running for a couple of years. So, and Joe Wilson, who I was co-show running with, had already been there and sort of established some things.
Yeah, I got to meet Joe. He seems like a really
Joe
good
was,
guy.
everybody was cool. But what really, and I'll never forget, I was on the show and maybe a few weeks into the show, and there was, this is nothing against anybody who came before me, but just sort of was the reality of what I dealt with. And I remember somebody from the crew had come up to me and said, "Thank you." And I said, "For what?" They said, "Knowing my name." It's the little things, right? Like knowing people's names, knowing about their family, knowing about their lives. This is who you're going to spend hours and hours in working with, et cetera, et cetera. And if they feel good, they're going to make everybody else around them feel good. So that's really sort of where it came from. And that's the way I operate in a writer's room. That's the way I operate in life. Like, I feel like my job is to turn around and bring people together and make everybody work together, right? It's in the Steve Jobs movie. He says, I don't play in the orchestra, I play the orchestra. Like that's how I feel. I feel like a conductor. Like my job is to conduct the orchestra. And if I could turn around and and also that's part of that's seeing talent, seeing what people's strengths are and what people's weaknesses are, and being able to turn around and utilize people. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone can do something. It's just figuring out what that is. And sometimes we live in a society where people don't have patience for that, or don't have the time. And I do understand that.
Or have way too much ego to allow people for anybody other than them to be the shiny penny ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then listen, which also never made sense to me. And I know I suffered that frustration where I would turn around on shows while I was coming up and something big would happen. And it was because it was my pitch or my idea. And the showrunner would never give you the credit. I always give credit. Always be that. That was Aaron's pitch. Like I always want people to feel acknowledged for what they do because it's why we do it partially for that, right? And it's like, yes, you're part of a team, but also it's like we do this because we want the accolades, we want these things. And also it's going to make you better at what you do and give you more confidence, which is only going to make me better. It's, again, the team effort. I never understood that guy who has to shoot the ball all the time. Like, I'd much rather dish the ball off and let someone else shoot it because that was my plan. I'm going to set the pick. You're going to get open, and I'm going to give you the ball. And though you shot it, it was my plan.
Well, you're talking about the fine art now of show running, though, obviously from such an experienced perspective where it seems easy. But I mean, look, first of all, I want to say there's a Ram Dass quote. You know Ram Dass at all?
Of course.
So he was visiting the Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba in India and said something like, I'm not sure what's next for me or what I'm supposed to do. And the wisdom was love everyone and tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I don't know how to do, I couldn't possibly do that because of this person. And he just said, love everyone with the biggest smile on his face, love everyone and tell the truth. And I think what you're talking about, right, is that. Yeah. And you're also talking about telling the truth. It takes a lot. Show business is a lot of bullshit sometimes. 100%. And it's a lot of people trying to pretend that they should be taking the credit for something that they didn't do so that 100%. They are justified in doing this. And I mean, I've always been so sensitive to that as an actor walking into a room, whether it's for an audition when we used to actually audition in front of people and get to like shake somebody's hand, or onto a set or whatever it is and just go, do I feel like I'm safe telling the truth here? You know, or is there a business and an agenda and stuff going on here where I just kind of have to like understand this isn't about the work. People don't really give a shit if I do a good job on that. They're just cranking out a product, whatever it is.
Though, of course, to that point, you give a shit about it.
But
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Fortunately for me, a lot of guys I played were just arrogant, cocky sort of pricks. So I was coming in with that anyway, which you're coming in with confidence, right? I wasn't playing like vulnerable guys.
Yeah.
So I had that ready to go. But the real me underneath that, right, is kind of just surveying the room and trying to get in. You just want to feel safe when you're creating anything.
Of course.
And you just made it such a safe day. It was awesome.
We also had Queen, who's amazing. Amazing, great human being. And she is literally one of my favorite people I've ever met in my life. And, Queen is she's genuine, she's real, and that helps too when you're number one on the call sheet. And that also helps with the crew. The crew loved her, and because everyone felt like they were working with someone who actually genuinely cared about them.
Yeah.
So it starts from the top down. And it was easy to do when I came in there and Queen was who she was. Together we were able to sort of create this thing on set.
Because you guys had a relationship that made two stronger than one kind of thing.
100%.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, right, for any actors, any creatives out there in our business at all. Look, I'm sitting in a chair right now where thankfully I got cast and for a couple episodes of this new show, The Countdown, coming out this summer, playing the governor of California. But the acting jobs are different, right? And the opportunities are fewer to a certain extent as far as the acting things are. Man, do you know what I would give to be in so many actors' positions who show up to work and they don't want to be there?
Oh, yeah.
And some of these actors make a lot of money. And you just 100%. Go, you shouldn't have to learn shitty lessons like ALS in order to appreciate your life and be blissful and be grateful and all that stuff. And so
different places in your life and different people deal with different things. I won't say names, but I've come across that. And I've had those conversations, and I've seen people not change, and I've seen people make massive changes.
Yes. But see, that's the key, right? And that's kind of what this show is about, which is why, I love talking with not just creative people, but athletes, people in health and wellness, doctors, entrepreneurs, because it's about a simple reality that I've learned over the last couple of years that you and I have discussed, which is, as Joe Dispenza says, you don't necessarily focus on healing, you focus on changing. Mm-hmm. And the people that are willing to change themselves will see the results in their life changing. Gandhi said it. I posted in a Substack newsletter that I wrote a couple of weeks ago, a quote that he said in 1946. It was something like, Gandhi said because Gandhi is remembered and sort of paraphrase the quote is like, be the change you want to see in the world. But the actual quote is something like, for the man who changes himself, the world around him will change for him or adapt to him. Do we know, what's that quote, Robbie? He wrote this in like 1946. And it's one thing to say it.
Yes.
It's another thing to actually have the courage to go within and take some accountability.
Yes.
Not necessarily for anyone other than yourself, to know thyself. It changes your life, and then that changes other people's lives.
100%. I remember being in a writer's room for In From the Cold from Netflix, and what I loved about that show was the first time where I created something that was all me. And so I was going to run it exactly the way I wanted. I knew how I wanted to run the room. I knew how I wanted to cast it. I knew all this stuff. And we're in the room, and I remember one of the young writers said to me, and it wasn't even a kiss-up moment. It was a moment of just like, wow, you're really like an amazing human being. And I remember saying to them, well, yeah, after 50 some years, like this is like, you could ask my wife, I wasn't always this guy, you know what I'm saying? I've been married 26 years and like, we talk about it all the time, and it's all the stuff you're talking about, the evolution of things. Also, when are you ready to let go of certain things? When are you ready to embrace other things? When are you willing to look in the mirror?
But for us to even be talking about this, you must be, you sound like are you a spiritual guy? Are you a self-aware guy? Are you somebody who's always interested?
Well, again, what I think, versus maybe what the rest of the world thinks, I'll say this, and this is really more about disposition. I was just always naturally happy. I was just naturally positive. Like, you know, and I know this, you have siblings, right? Isn't it amazing you grew up in the same house and you could be so different?
Such different personalities, yeah.
And that has so much to do. Birth order, you know, your sign, you know, so many different things can play into that. But I would say most people, if they heard my full background story, would say, oh my God, that's horrific. That's horrifying. I'm so sorry you went through all that. And it didn't affect me maybe the same way it affected some of my siblings. And because I always saw things in a powerful, more bright way, I always had a belief in myself, which I definitely needed, because where I came from, nobody did what I did. And my family couldn't understand. No one could understand it. And then I had to turn around and go, no, this is who I am and this is what I need to do.
And you took ownership of that at what age, do you think?
I think
it sounds like younger than 13.
Oh, yeah. No, I think I had to. Well, there comes a point where you realize, and again, everyone I think deals with this differently. And I remember the exact moment. Again, maybe a little too personal, but you know,
no.
But it's an example of something. My mother was dating somebody, and something happened in a diner, and this guy came in and saw him. His name was Art, and he called him like Roy. And I was 12, and he said, I'm not Roy, that's my twin brother. And he's like, oh, wow, you guys have the same tats and, you know, all this stuff. And I'll never forget, you know, the guy left, and Art was sitting there, and he went to the bathroom. My mother goes, wow, isn't that crazy that Art has a twin brother? I said, Mom, he's lying. She goes, what do you mean he's lying? She believed it. I knew instantly this was bullshit. I was 12 years old. And at that moment on, I just knew I was on my own. I knew I had to. Like, at that point,
you got it.
I got it. And then she didn't.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And I just knew. And so when you ask, I'd say that's the moment for me where I turn around and go, okay, I have a good sense of things. I have to just trust and that's not to say I didn't screw up a ton and I didn't make bad mistakes and bad decisions.
No.
But my base of who I was, I knew I could follow my own light.
Yeah, that happened for me like in the last few months. So it took me till almost 49 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and so I get what you're saying. Very, very, somatically, I get what you're saying. And that's just really cool because part of, I think, one of the gifts in this life is once you know you're on your own, or once you know who you are.
That's a big one.
Then you get to go out into the world and love yourself.
Agreed.
And it just save a lot of pain and suffering.
And that's most of people's issues. They have no idea who they really are. And that's on so many levels. That's on who you are personally, where you may come from, all those things. Like I always say, and you just said it, but I always say the same thing. Once you know who you are, it sets you free to the world, you know? And I always felt like I'm of the world, like, because I know who I am.
The truth shall set you free.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, all these things that sound like, you know, cliche.
Always say that.
Whatever.
Yeah, the kitten hanging on the thing. Like there's like all that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. But it actually is the more books that I've read, the more wisdom that I've sort of tried to integrate and embody and then share with people. It really is the simple truths. But the longer it takes you to get there, the more you go, well, how could it be that simple? Because you've created this whole other thing that's so unnecessarily complicated.
Yes, and most of the world operates that way.
Correct.
So it's really hard because, like, especially as I get older, I have less and less patience for the bullshit.
Yeah.
I have less
Why
and
would
less,
you?
Yeah.
You've seen through it since you were 12 years old.
Yeah, and so, like, I used to be able to play the game, and then I got to a point where I just don't care anymore. Like, you know, I really don't. Like, there's so many things now that just like this off of me. And, you know, I have two young kids, as you know. When I say kids, my daughter will be 25 in October. My son's 21. And I was just in New York with Josephine, and she cares so much about so many things. And really what I keep telling her is, stop. Am I allowed to curse? Am I not allowed to curse?
I think we should curse away. We can always bleep them out.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I say, stop giving a fuck what people think. Stop giving a fuck what we think. Like, do what you need to do for you. This is your life.
Yeah.
You know, you need to live it. And stop giving it, like, you care too much about all these things. And the minute you do that, you will truly be free. Yeah. And that doesn't mean be an asshole.
No, of course not.
It just means literally live your truth. And that doesn't mean you also can't take in stuff that people say to you and all that stuff, but you have to believe in yourself more than anyone, because more people are going to say no than say yes to you in your life.
You guys, I just want to take a second to say thank you to you, the audience. This show doesn't happen without you. I am, from the bottom of my heart, I am deeply grateful to you. because I started The Impossible Dream as a platform to help myself heal and to help other people heal. This podcast is all about that. And without you, that can't happen. We help each other heal. It really does take a village. So if you could just take a second to click and subscribe, like us, rate and review the show. Your comments really do help. Not only do they help us bring you other guests that you want to hear from, but they help us improve the show. They help us grow the show. Your engagement helps us expand what's possible for the reach of Impossible Dreams. So thank you, truly thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Impossible Dreams team. It's such it's so true. And it just, it speaks so much to the journey that I had when I was a young actor at her age. The difference is, right, when it was all going well, it was all good.
Yeah.
It's when it's not going well or you're up against when is it going to happen kind of thing, which similar is for me now, where I go, when is my body going to turn around and respond to the physical disability and damage that's been done is now totally incoherent with who I am. Like, I have come into complete ownership of who I am. I know the truth and all of that. I don't give a fuck about, and all of those things. And I've worked so hard to clear not just that in the present, but the karma of my family's ancestor kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I go, okay, so as within, so without. Eventually, the physical body should, that's my dream, right? But the impatience of going, when, and maybe it's never going to happen because I don't see it, is the same thing as being a 25-year-old, looking on the outside, needing to see it in order to believe it. And you talked about belief a few minutes ago, and I want to ask you about that. How important do you think belief is to this whole thing? Because I tell my kids, like, if there's one lesson I've learned that I want my two sons, right, 15 and 13, to take with them for the rest of their lives, it's no matter what, nobody takes your belief in yourself away from you. That's it. Don't ever, no matter what, don't ever stop believing in you.
100%.
That's it. That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
as soon as you start to do that, that's when it spins.
I've seen it. I've seen it a million times with people. And I think, I've proven more people wrong in my life than I've probably proven them right. And look, and that's for a lot of things. That's societal things. You just hit on it. That's generational trauma, that I think people don't always realize. May that be personal, may that be cultural, in my case, both. I come from Holocaust survivors, people who lost a lot, which makes, especially also living in this time, really hard because people are not taking that into account. They're getting up on a sort of social media thing that they're all getting behind, and they're not realizing the trauma that, I know that I've lived, so I'm re-seeing it again, through all this stuff, which is a different subject, but it's all plays part in that, because even in that, I'm absolute in my sort of belief of where I stand on all that and that I'm on the right side of history, and I think you have to be that way because even, like I say this all the time, I feel, and I'm sure you feel the same way about your kids, I believe in you more than anybody, and yet you still have to believe in yourself more than me.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah. My parents could not possibly have believed in me more than anyone.
Yeah.
But if you erode your own belief in yourself,
yes,
the narrative of, like, we create our lives, right? With God, and we are God. We are this consciousness. We create our lives.
Yes.
And it comes from the energy that you put out into the world,
100%.
which you can't fake that energy. I was plenty happy on the outside and buff on the outside, and life looking to all my friends and everything was great. And underneath the hood and inside the house or whatever was going in my own brain, I was just white knuckling my life, yada yada. So it's like, no, now that I've cleaned that up, which has been the greatest transformational work of my life, and why a disease like ALS, I've chosen to see it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, so I totally feel simpatico with you about all of that. Do you think, what's more spiritual for you, the art of being a father or the art of storytelling?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think because I didn't have a dad, wanting to be a father was so important to me. It's like something I always knew I wanted to be, And I have such a great relationship with both my kids. Like, I joke. I remember I did something. Josephine, I don't know, was like 19. And I said, "Oh, did daddy fall off the pedestal?" And she said, "That happened a long time ago." But, I always was trying to be conscious of that. I mean, my greatest accomplishment is being a dad. Hands down, because that's what I'll live on. You know what I'm saying? It's like they'll remember me and their kids hopefully will remember me. Yeah, and then eventually one day you sort of, like everybody. It's why I don't believe in sort of being buried. Like I sort of feel like, because eventually nobody's going to come to your grave.
Oh, we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to him about that. I'm super just realized a couple weeks ago, I was watching some TV show and, the main character, one of the parents dies and the kids all go, it's like a Western and they all go out to the thing and then in the ground, they're looking at the thing. And then and I start thinking about every funeral scene that I've been in movies and TV and watch and just go, what is everyone doing there? Like, what are we all doing there? If you believe in anything, the spirit's gone.
Yep.
The body is just a vessel, and the spirit is gone. And you're going and you're standing at a stone to say hi to a body. Like, the thing inside, the energy that will live on inside.
The Bible, the ashes, dust to dust, right? Like, that's why I'll be cremated for sure. And I told my kids, like, I don't care, go up to a mountaintop somewhere and just let me out into the wind. Yeah. But, I just went to a funeral, I was saying in New York, my Aunt Stephanie had passed away. And the really quick, interesting story about my Aunt Stephanie was my mom took me to Orchard Beach, and I was 2 years old. So this is 1970. She was 19 at the time, 1920. And I had sort of was running around the beach and collecting starfish, and I went on this like hippie blanket of these like bunch of these kids smoking weed and stuff like that. And I met my Aunt Stephanie, and my mom came over and started talking to her because she was playing with me. And then that's how my mom met my stepdad. And that's how I became Adam Glass. So if not for my Aunt Stephanie, I would never have been Adam Glass. I never would have gotten her parents, who were amazing to me. I never felt adopted. Even all the cousins teased that I was the favorite. And Josephine's named after my grandfather, Joseph Glass. So, who was probably one of my biggest mentors in my life, where I get my comedy from and sort of where I get definitely... he was he made curtains for a living. He was in the schmata business, as they say, the rags business. Yeah. And, he was a kingfish. He was a storyteller. So I definitely, at his feet, learned a lot of that stuff. But I was at the cemetery, and they're all my relatives. And all I'm thinking to myself is, well, I know I haven't come, and I'm it. And they haven't come. No one's probably been at this tombstone for 30 years. And not only that, this place now, Mount Sinai, which at one time I'm sure was this beautiful...
Wait, where is that?
It's right in Queens, in Maspeth.
Okay.
Is now like surrounded by freeways and factories. And like literally I took pictures because I couldn't think. And I already knew this deep down inside, but I was like, no. Like, and my cousin's like, I think we all have plots here. I'm like, not me. I'm like, if it's not in my thing,
fun, buddy.
Fun. I'm not coming here.
No, right? It's true. I haven't been, I remember as a kid when I think I started, my parents would take me to funerals, maybe I was like a young teenager. I don't think they wanted me to see that stuff before then, but I remember, obviously had loved my grandparents greatly, and I think about where they're buried, and I haven't been to those graves, and unless another relative dies who's getting buried in the same cemetery, and then you all make the time to go see everyone who's there, and you tap the stones and the whole thing. But my dad did have a cool story. When his mom passed away, they went to visit maybe a year later, and they couldn't find the stone, right? Because there's so many graves, and they're literally just looking all over the place. Nobody was able to help them, and my dad looked up and saw a single deer, standing, and he just felt like he should walk towards it, and he got there. The deer moved, and it was standing right on top of my bubby's grave. And so stuff like that's kind of amazing. Yeah. But, short of the cool stories, it's like, I think there's just something, one of my way bigger impossible dreams is to find a way to have these conversations with kids at younger ages, right? Like, but formalize it somehow. Like some kind of, the way school, the way our culture and our society, like it's so much bigger than this limited thing that we tell everybody. We don't give people the secrets to the matrix, right? We're not giving them, everyone's taking the red pill and there's a blue pill or whatever analogy you want to use and stuff like that. It's like, well, why don't we all discuss, what do you think happens when you die? Yeah. Do you have a soul? What do you believe? What do you think? As opposed to like, well, I'm just going to go to church or synagogue or whatever and just believe whatever they tell me to believe, which my parents, you know what I mean? We're missing opportunities here to.
Yeah, I never sort of bought into that. Any organized religion, I think the interesting thing about Judaism is, we're also a culture, we're also a race. So there's a lot of pride in all that. But I go to synagogue once a year. I go for Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. I promised my bubby on her deathbed. I've never, and it keeps me connected. I'm glad I go once a year.
Sure.
And I sit through the service, and I've always taken my kids and all that stuff. Yeah, you got to find, it's interesting. You were talking about this earlier, and it made me think of two things. One is, right, and it sounds like such a general thing to say, but right, life's about balance. And it's like Buddha, right? He always says life is like, we're always getting knocked off balance. But that's the only way to achieve balance, is to be knocked off. So you're constantly doing this. And I feel that all the time. There are times where I'm dialed in and I'm really balanced and I'm eating right and I'm sleeping well and I'm doing stuff. And then there are times where I'm like, oh man, I'm eating like shit. And I'm not here and I'm not fully focused and I'm sort of pulling back and forth into that. Then the second part of that is, we were saying having these conversations. I had this conversation with Josephine about a year ago, and I said something to her, made her actually write a song. But I was like, because I was trying to sort of say to her, you have time and yet none of us have time. Right? It's that catch-22. She's going to be 25 and it's like before you know it, you're 30. And you're 35, then you're 40, and how your life, especially as an artist, right? She's a singer and she's trying to make it. And there is a certain sort of time period where you have a better chance. And as you get older, it gets harder and harder and harder. I think especially, unfortunately, for women, because of the way our society, puts a price on them, even though I would argue they just get better and better with age.
Yeah.
So I said to her, there's 4, then there's 3, then there's 2, and then there's 1. And I was sort of talking about our nucleus family. She started to cry. And made her write a song about it. But I was trying to sort of just say to her, try to value all this as we're here and we all can enjoy it because, I've seen it, you've seen it. It's what happens. It's life, and before you know it, you're the only one standing left. It was so crazy in the graveyard. It hit me. I was like, oh my God, I'm the oldest glass. I'm now the elder of my family. Aunt Stephanie's gone. I'm the next generation. I'm the oldest of all my cousins. I'm it. Holy shit, how did that happen?
Yeah, and there's really no way to even process that, right? It means so much more than just that fact, that the ability to even process it, it's what you're talking about. It sounds like you were talking about how you're in balance, you're out of balance. It sounds like at least, though, where true north is, where center is, so that when you're not on it. And I think the problem is a lot of people don't even know where that is because they've never even had a chance to find it. And for me, I had some intuitive sense that it existed and this existential angst of trying to find it. And now that I've found it, I say on this show frequently, I'm the happiest person I've ever been, except dealing with, the disabilities that I have to deal with. But the rest of my life, infinitely happier in so many ways than when I arguably should have been the happiest dude in the world. And don't get me wrong, there were times when I certainly was, and I never failed to appreciate what I had.
Yeah.
But I made it about things that it doesn't need to be about.
And you're tying this to your sickness, and I understand why, but this also, I do believe, is also age. I think you would have gotten to some of these places regardless if you had ALS or not, because as you get older and you see your children live through things and you see the loved ones live through things, it just changes you. It just naturally does.
But this is I sort of bounce back with that. I was a 45-year-old man when this started, and it started 2 weeks after I asked God to help me change. And I arguably, I knew that I was better than, not better, I knew that I wasn't in flow with life and that I was maxing out over and over and over again in a cycle of a good job and some good money and a good relationship, and then unemployment and relationships over, and I don't love myself, and repeat and repeat and repeat. And I was exhausted, man. And I had been through a traumatic divorce, and I'd been through some other stuff, and we had all gone through the pandemic, but I hadn't changed. And I was growing up with a certain amount of wisdom that had kind of maxed out. It's like, when you feel like you're just plateaued, and you're like, this isn't it. And that has blown open, right, over the last couple of years. And I've changed more than ever. I've changed multiple lifetimes worth of change in a few years.
Yes.
Which has been excruciating at times and also extraordinary. But I don't know. I was in my own way, but I
100%.
didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to get out of Sadhguru, who I often reference. It seems to be Robbie like once an episode. But I saw an Instagram video, if you know Sadhguru.
Of course.
And for those of you who don't, an Indian yogi mystic who is one of the most enlightened men in the world that I spent a weekend meditating with. He says, like, oftentimes you can feel like you're in a karmic cycle that no matter what you do and no matter how badly you want it, nothing changes and you can't get out of it. And that's exactly what I felt like. And I know there's people out there with anxiety and insomnia and depression and cycles and repeated cycles. And all I can say is, like, you have to consciously want to look at those patterns and those cycles and ask yourself some questions and see what comes up and be willing to very slowly and kindly and patiently and lovingly with yourself make change.
Sure. And I would say my only argument back to you is the LS happened to you before you had a chance. 45 is still young. I tell you, man, 50 is a big turning point in your life. 55, you feel it's interesting. I would say 50 and 55 are two of my biggest markers. I'm 56 now. 50 was the sort of like, and you know this, I've been married for 26 years to an amazing woman who is very spiritual, much more spiritual than me. And, you guys have had some amazing conversations.
Yeah, she's incredible.
She's very connected me to things that I never have. And I know she didn't think I was listening all those years. She was telling me some of these things. And maybe on the surface I wasn't because, definitely fall into that category of like, I'm a provider, I'm a grinder, I have to go.
Yeah,
that's all that matters. Man up. Like that's it. And then, finally got to a place where I hit a certain age, like I said, and I think it was around my 50th birthday, where I woke the fuck up and was like, same thing. Like, has any of this brought me happiness? Has any of these things I'm doing like really made me like, what makes me happy? What can I do? How can I live better? How can I be smarter and live more efficiently and really find true happiness? Because and you're sort of talking about this, and I've wanted to mention this for since the beginning of our conversation. As you know, what you're going through is not my first rodeo. I had a very, very close friend of mine, Scott Liu, who I love to death. And, he got it at 31, 32, and had it for 15 years, before he passed. And I lived with him through that whole thing. In fact, we had a friend who we had his wedding. And then about a year later, he says, we're going to go to a buddy of ours' bachelor party. And it was like way up on, I forget, what's that lake that looks like Mars? It's like way up.
Lake Hollywood?
What?
Lake Hollywood?
No, it's up it's up past Utah. It's Lake Havaster. Is it? No, I don't know. It looks like the moon. Literally, you're like running around, these red rocks and stuff like that. But they're having the bachelor party up there. So
Salda. No.
So he turns around and he says, they need someone to bring up some mushrooms and some weed and this is, and some ecstasy. So he's like, I said, Josephine was just born. I was like, my wife will kill me. I can't go do this with you. And my wife loves Scott so much. She's like, well, if you're going with Scott, I feel safe, right? And we got in a car and we drove. And the first night we stopped in Arizona and we took some caps, some mushrooms. I think, again, we're like 31, 32 years old. And we're walking right in the desert outside of our hotel. And he just turned to me and he goes, I have ALS. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I have Lou Gehrig's disease, and this is what's going to happen, and da-da-da. And I was like, well, what do we do now? And he goes, we live. And I'll never forget that. And we did. The adventures that we had over the next 15 years together. Yeah, man. We lived 3 lifetimes.
Yeah.
And we had these and we got to these places, and now his sons and Anne, his wife, are still a good friend. I'm watching his boys grow up. He had twin boys, Rocky and Roman, and in fact, we're going to go see the Jack Kirby Museum exhibition in a few weeks. They're still a big part of our lives. And I guess my point to this is, like you, I think Scott really found his, for a better term of a word, like his purpose, his raison d'etre, his reason for being. Like, he really dialed in. And for him, a lot of it was here and here. It was his mind and his heart. Those were the two things that I think grew the most over those 15 years.
Well, because everything else breaks down.
And he's like, but he also was very comfortable as long as this kept working and that kept working, he was going to be okay. And you had to know Scott. Scott was an interesting kid. He was from the south side of Chicago, not south side of Chicago, excuse me, the outskirts of Chicago. I used to joke with him because, like, you know, to me, he grew up like John Hughes movie, where I grew up totally different than that. So I used to tease him about that all the time. But he and I shared so many things, but he loved reggae music. Like, and I'm not just talking Bob Marley, like he just loved reggae, period. And he loved smoking weed. So like those were two things. And yet he was this like science nerd kid who really smart, who was a writer. He directed a movie. He wrote and directed a movie while he was on ALS in a chair. He directed 2 movies. Like he found Olivia Wilde.
Wow.
He cast her in one of her first big movie roles.
Wow.
Like he did so many amazing things. But when Anne called me to say the time has come, I showed up. It's so Scott. And I said to the kids, they were younger, and I said, you don't have to. And they're like, no, we want to come. They had grown up with Scott. They only knew Scott in a wheelchair. They only knew Scott as having ALS. And they came, and we walked into this room, and he was there. And at this point, he couldn't really speak anymore. But surrounded by his nurses, blasting reggae music. They're all dancing. And, you know, I just walked up to him, and the way he looked at me, I could just tell he was smiling inside.
Yeah,
He was just like, even though he knew at the end, he was so happy, and this is exactly what and I mean, it was literally like the house was filled with people. It was like a celebration.
Yeah.
It was really, of all the people that loved him and all that stuff, and it is truly one of the most beautiful. And then we went out, and like 2 hours later, Ann came out and said, you know, everybody should come in and say their goodbye, and we did, and then he was gone. But it was like, and then we all sat around till like 3, 4 in the morning, just talking and telling stories and smoking and hanging out, and so it was a really beautiful thing. But it's a long way of saying, like, when you say holds, you know, like I said, oh, you need the bathroom, you need my shoulder. Like, again, I've been there, done that, and sort of feel privileged that I've been through that, and I've seen that, and I was there not just for a friend, but learned so much in return from that friend.
Yeah.
All the things you're saying, like valuing things that, you know, that he's going through. And I'll tell you this one thing, I think I've told you this before, but also being able to have a sense of humor through it all.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll never forget, we did all these fundraisers. And at first 4 or 5 years, like Tracy Ullman hosted one, like they were just gigantic. So the 5th year, and we're backstage, and I'm going to go out and give my speech, and we're just sitting there, and he sort of wheels up and he looks, he goes, not so many people this year. I said, you're not dying fast enough. And he started laughing so hard. He's like, you fucker. And he's like, so true.
Oh my God.
I stopped feeling sorry for you.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, you gotta laugh.
Yeah.
You got to laugh because it doesn't make any sense. It's incomprehensible. And so, you know, I appreciate you sharing Scott's story and what was his impossible dream?
Oh, you know, it's so funny you say that. You know, I mean, look, he really wanted to be a movie. He wanted to make movies, and he got to make 2 movies when he got ALS. Movies that he couldn't get made before then. And yeah, I'd argue people really rallied behind him because of ALS, which is another story about our industry. You know, our industry gets a really bad rap. And I saw so many people help that guy out. You know what I'm saying? Keep his health insurance going, turn around and like keep sure that he was good. And like, you know, people were strangers, you know, didn't even know him. But because he was part of this community, you know, which again, I think when we think Hollywood, especially the way the news spins it, you know, which is what really made me mad during the fires, was like, you know, everybody's like, a bunch of rich. Like, I'm always like, George Clooney doesn't live here.
Right.
Right. Like the people that lost their houses are the hardworking, you know, blue collar people who, you know, write and try to make livings and have a craft, and, you know, and then don't even get me into Altadena, which, you know, had more black families than, you know, most places lose homes. Like there's the stories that get spun versus the reality. And this town always gets this rap that it doesn't deserve. I've seen this for all the assholes that we talk about that are on the upper echelons. I've also seen community come together for people so much.
Yeah.
And I definitely saw that. It's Scott.
Yeah,
you know?
they do. And yeah, I mean, I thank the Amazon studios and the producers of The Countdown because, you know, those guys, similar to how you helped the year before, it's health insurance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which people don't think about.
No, they don't think about it. You know,
they don't realize that.
You're on television. Don't you just make $1 zillion? No, actually, you don't. Nowadays, some shows you don't make a lot of money at all.
No.
And you need a certain amount to get that health insurance.
Sure do.
Last question for you, Mr. Glass.
Yes, sir.
What, if any, impossible dream do you have that you have not achieved or you're working on? You got exciting besides obviously being an incredible husband, dad, and television writer? I sense that you have something going on.
Well, there's a couple of things I still want to achieve that are still in my sort of list of things to do, right? I still want to write a novel. I think most writers want to do that. I still want to get a movie made. I had a movie made that, and I shouldn't knock it because I think any achievement of getting a movie made is amazing. But early in my career, I helped a friend write something, and it got made, and it was like a fun MTV B movie, Monster Island, which I joke because, till this day, like that'll be in my obituary. So I have to turn around and make a bigger movie. But, I still want to get some stuff done, like career-wise. Like but I'm also moving towards a place, I'm part owner of an AI company,
Cool.
which I know people are scared of AI, but I feel like it's a tool.
Cuban talked a lot about it.
Yeah,
we should talk offline.
Yeah, I feel like it's a tool, and I feel like, you can't stop progress, and history has proven that over and over again. So you better get on board and figure out how, and I always think it's so funny. We'll sit there and tell West Virginia miners they should, move on to new energy. But when we ask ourselves to do something, we can't do it. And again, that gets back to looking in the mirror and sort of being real with ourselves. And we seem as a country especially hard to do that. And as a race, people tend to not want to look in the mirror and face themselves. They want to look to lay blame elsewhere. So if it's new technology, if it's, a group of people like the Mexicans who are like some of the hardest working people you'll ever meet in your life. And it's like, they're not taking your jobs, you idiots, sorry to get political. But those are the kind of things that drive me crazy. Just us being able to look in the mirror, be honest with ourselves and say,
be honest, man.
And again, it's
just
what it comes down to with everything really. And it's the hardest thing, and yet it's the simplest thing.
Yeah.
And yet it's the thing we struggle with the most.
Well, but the more people that are out there doing it.
Yeah.
Right. The challenge becomes when people in high profiles, leaders are not, when news media is not, and all
That's
of that.
The problem.
Then you just
what's the truth anymore?
You just keep dumbing down everybody.
Yeah. Perception is bigger than reality, which is insane. Like I feel like we're so stepping backwards, and that's a whole other podcast. But again, at least what you can try to do in your day-to-day life is be as honest and truthful as you possibly can be, and especially for yourself and for your family. I think that's what's really essential and important. And then as for the business, I just think, I built a certain career with certain brands, and I think you also easily get put in boxes just like actors and singers and everything. So part of what I'm doing is sort of blowing that box up right now. And, I came home after, I was finally done with the gig on the Equalizer, and I said to my wife, look, I can plug and play into another show. I'll make a quarter of what I'm making. I'll be miserable. But I'll do it because I get it. I'd be blessed and lucky to be working in this environment. Or I can get part of the change that I think is going to happen and invest in myself and do some things that I think will actually put us in a better place. And, my wife very luckily said, I got you, babe. That's my ride and die, and let's do it. And let's figure it out. And even if it means less money coming in, let's do it. And you were talking about this earlier. I haven't probably been more happier in the last year doing this, making less money right now, but doing things that really interest me. And one of those is independent television. Just like there was an independent film movement, there's going to be an independent television movement. I think it's already happening. I just started a writer's room on a series I helped create with two other friends of mine. We were able to get backing and financing for it. I'm doing a lot of what you call international co-pros also, which, I did for Netflix when I shot in Spain and lived in Spain for almost a year. And I have a bunch of projects going with that. And then also helping with this AI company that I'm helping build.
And Ninth Circle.
And Ninth Circle, the publishing.
Yeah.
So it's more being sort of like back to what we're saying, being the conductor and finding super talented people, working with them, believing in them, giving them opportunities, giving them chances, and building something. And then I would say, finally, the last, if I say two things, I want to launch my children into the world. I want them to have a chance to pursue the things that they're passionate about. I want my wife also to launch into the world. She's given so much of her life to be a mother and a wife, and I think this is her time to really shine, and sort of she has so many interesting creative things. She's an artist in her own right, so I really want to see that. And I also would love to do more traveling with her. Her and I have a whole world yet. We've seen about a third of the world. We still have
Cool.
2/3 of the world to see.
Cool, man.
So I would say those are all the things that enlist, and just keep trying to be the best person I can be and keep evolving and keep changing, and also give back. I'm a city kid. I'd like to go back and, maybe CUNY or something. I'd love to teach, eventually, and sort of show kids that grew up in my neighborhood that, it doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. If you really have the passion for it, you can go out and make stuff happen.
Adam Glass, you're a beautiful man.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you, my brother.
It's always good to see you,
Thank you for
brother.
coming on the show.
Come on,
Yeah.
stop. I'm going to come
Lots
give
of
you a
love.
hug.
All right. Let's hug it out.
Hug it out, bro.
Yes. Ah.